The first time he saw her, she was standing by the busted espresso machine in the back corner of the gallery cafe, muttering something under her breath that was far too poised to be a curse but too tired to be elegant. Jonah was 23, already on his third black coffee of the day, and absolutely certain that everything in his life was temporary. He was a literature grad student with a broken bicycle, a stack of overdue books, and an eye for the kind of women who could ruin him. But she wasn't that. She was something else entirely. She wasn't beautiful, not in the way people usually mean. Her dark blouse had a coffee stain near the hem. Her gray slacks hung off her hips like she'd lost weight by accident. And her hair, dark brown with streaks of resignation, was pinned up in a way that said she had once known how to be fashionable but had simply stopped caring. He noticed the tiny twitch in her right eye when she spoke to the barista and the way she rubbed at her left temple like someone accustomed to migraines. This was not a woman who lived for the attention of others. She looked like she was just trying to survive the next hour. Jonah didn't mean to stare. But there was something about her, something imperfect and alive, that made her more compelling than any of the polished, aspirational girls who haunted his seminars. He didn't know her name. But he noticed she didn't order coffee. Just a sparkling water, with lemon, no straw. The second time he saw her was 2 weeks later at the same cafe, only this time she was sketching in a battered notebook that looked like it had weathered a divorce in 3 separate apartments. He didn't know she could draw. He'd never imagined her hands could look so focused, so intent, like they were chasing something only she could see. And then the third time, the time everything pivoted on a dime, she spilled her water, an entire glass, right onto her sketchbook. It was an accident, the kind that happens when your body forgets to care. She sat frozen for a full 3 seconds, staring at the spreading blot, her fingers unmoving. And then, something in her just cracked. Not loudly. Quietly. Her shoulders collapsed. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Without thinking, Jonah stood, walked over, and handed her a single square of paper towel. Just one. That was the moment. Not the mess. Not the gesture. It was the way he did it. No fanfare. No attempt to be charming. He simply placed it in front of her, nodded once, and turned back to his table without waiting for a thank you. But she didn't let him leave. "You're the only one who didn't look at me like I'd broken something," she said. Her voice was low, husky, like it had been smoked through a decade of disappointment. Jonah turned halfway toward her, met her eyes, hazel, maybe, or green, but dulled by exhaustion, and said, "That sketchbook looked like it could take worse." She stared at him for a beat too long. Then something happened to her mouth, a small twitch, and then, slowly, a smile. Not a pretty one. Not symmetrical. But real. "I haven't smiled in a long time," she said. "I noticed," he replied, surprising himself. And that was it. Not a date. Not even a promise. Just a broken moment patched by someone too young to know what he was stepping into. But later, much later, he would remember the exact way her fingers gripped the edge of the sketchbook. Like she was holding onto the last thread of something that used to be hers. He didn't even know her name yet. But it was the first time in years she walked out of that cafe with her shoulders just slightly less burdened. She'd remember that moment as the first thing that made her feel human again. And that, of course, was how it all began. Her name was Elise. He learned it 3 days after the spill, during an accidental meeting that wasn't really accidental at all. Jonah had started arriving at the cafe earlier, staying longer, always with a book open but never really reading. He'd glance up every few minutes, pretending to adjust his seat, his drink, the light, until finally, she walked in. Same cautious steps, same sharp eyes scanning the room like she was always bracing for someone she didn't want to see. But this time, she stopped at his table. "You're the only person here who doesn't look like they're trying to be someone," she said, resting her sketchbook on the table like it was a fragile artifact. "And you're the only person who doesn't pretend to like the music," Jonah replied without missing a beat. She almost smiled again. "Not quite." "I'm Elise," she said, sitting before he could invite her. He nodded. Jonah. That afternoon turned into 2 hours of conversation that never once drifted toward the polite. They spoke of the things most people avoided: burnt-out marriages, wasted years, failed friendships, and the strange comfort of bookstores no one visits anymore. Elise admitted she used to teach art in high school, back before the divorce and the lawsuit that gutted half her life. Jonah admitted he'd dropped out of law school after one semester and had never told his parents the truth. "Does anyone know?" she asked. He shook his head. "I told them I'm doing a dual degree. They think I'm exhausted from ambition. Really, I'm just tired of pretending." She didn't judge. She didn't laugh. She just nodded, slowly, like she knew the exact kind of lie that keeps you safe at family dinners. The truth came easily with her. Too easily. By their fourth meeting, they were sitting closer. Their hands never touched, but there was a magnetic awareness in the space between them, a kind of gravitational pull that made Jonah lean in without realizing. Still, they knew the lines. She was 42, twice divorced, a mother whose daughter was already in college. Jonah was 23, broke, idealistic, still trying to figure out if his fear of failure was stronger than his fear of becoming ordinary. She lived in a townhome in an upscale suburb full of vinyl fences, meticulous lawns, and neighbors who reported trash cans left out too long. He lived in a four-man shared house near campus with peeling paint and a shower that moaned like an injured animal. They were from different planets. But somehow, every time they spoke, it felt like they'd cracked a hole in the world and crawled into a secret space where age, class, and judgment couldn't reach them. Until the phone call. It came at night. Elise was at home, curled on the couch with a glass of red wine and a barely touched dinner. Jonah had texted her an hour earlier, "You made me want to write again." "What the hell is that?" She hadn't replied, but the message sat open on her screen. Then her phone rang. Blocked number. She almost ignored it. "Elise Lambert," a voice said when she picked up. Male. Dry. Unfamiliar. "Yes? This is a courtesy call. You should be aware that someone has been asking questions. About you. About a certain, younger man you've been seen with around campus cafes." She didn't answer. Her spine straightened. "Who is this?" "Let's just say someone cares enough to be concerned. You have a reputation, Elise. And you used to have a career. Be careful who you're seen with." Click. The line went dead. She sat in silence, phone still pressed to her ear, heart pounding with the cold sting of being watched. She hadn't touched Jonah. Not once. No lines crossed. But they'd crossed something else, some unspoken social border that was never meant to be traversed quietly. The next day, she didn't show up to the cafe. Nor the day after. Jonah texted. Once. Then again. Then called. Nothing. Until the fourth day, when a letter arrived in his campus mailbox. Not a text. Not an email. A letter, handwritten, deliberate. Jonah. You've done nothing wrong. But sometimes the world punishes us for things that make us feel alive. Please don't come looking. E. He read it twice. Then a third time. And for the first time since they'd met, Jonah felt something break open inside him, not from heartbreak, not yet, but from the brutal clarity that even something innocent can be threatened when people start to notice. The silence stretched 6 days. On the 7th, Jonah stopped checking his phone every hour. He told himself he had misunderstood her, that she hadn't meant anything serious by the letter, that maybe this was just what adults did to pull away when things got complicated, end things before they could be called a beginning. But that was a lie, and he knew it. Because something about Elise had rewired his sense of time. Nothing about her had ever felt casual. He didn't try to see her. Not yet. But he started walking different routes. Taking long loops past the neighborhood she'd described in offhand fragments. Sketches of her life he'd committed to memory without meaning to. Third house past the roundabout, the one with the ivy that refuses to die, a stupid fountain the HOA thinks makes us look classy. He never saw her. But the tension of maybe kept him walking. Then, just as quietly as she'd disappeared, she came back. It was nearly 10 at night, and Jonah had just closed his laptop after 3 hours of half-written poetry and 2 beers. His door buzzed. No one buzzed. His roommates were gone. She stood on the porch in a long, dark coat, eyes shaded beneath the bill of a cap. "I shouldn't be here," she said. "You are." She stepped in. Said nothing more. That night, they didn't talk like people trying to impress each other. They talked like 2 soldiers in a foxhole. Side by side on his narrow couch, knees touching, words slow and unpolished. She told him the call had come from someone connected to her ex-husband. That her daughter had been sent screenshots of them walking out of the cafe, with captions like, "How long has your mother been trolling undergrad forums?" He told her he'd spent the past few days writing a poem that began and ended with her hands. She laughed then, for real. Not the broken half-smile she'd worn like armor. A full laugh, unguarded and warm. "You're too young to be this poetic," she said. "You're too old to care about what people think." "Maybe," she said. "But I care about what you'll become." "I'm becoming this," he said. "Right now. With you." The line hovered in the air like smoke from a match. They didn't kiss. They didn't touch beyond the accidental brush of fingers reaching for the same wineglass. But something deepened between them, like a pulse sinking to a new rhythm. She stayed until 3 a.m. He walked her out. Neither of them saw the figure across the street. A lone silhouette on a second-story balcony, half hidden behind a curtain. They had been there for only a minute, but it was long enough. Long enough to see Jonah's hand resting lightly on Elise's back. Long enough to watch her glance over her shoulder with the unmistakable tension of someone who knows this is fragile, forbidden. Long enough to see her kiss his cheek. The witness didn't need proof. They had what they needed. The next day, Elise texted first. "Still feel like you're becoming something?" Jonah replied. "Only when you're around." They started meeting at night. Not because they were ashamed, but because daytime belonged to people who didn't need to hide. Night made room for the unfinished. They talked in parked cars, in bookstores right before closing, in the echo of abandoned parks. They shared stories not meant for anyone else, her father's silence after she dropped out of med school, his brother's cruel jokes about him being the sensitive one. Jonah once told her he felt like a building people were always trying to renovate. She told him she felt like a road that got repaved so many times it forgot where it was supposed to go. In those late hours, Elise stopped calculating her value in years and scars. Jonah stopped trying to look older. They just existed. Quiet. Electric. But the night had a way of forgetting its secrets. 2 days later, a flyer appeared on the campus bulletin board near Jonah's department. Handwritten. Sharp. Ask grad student Jonah G. who he's dating. She could be your mother. Or your teacher. Or both. No name. No photo. But it didn't have to be obvious. The message landed with enough cruelty to start whispers. The campus was small. The world, smaller. Elise didn't see it at first. But Jonah did. And for the first time, he considered walking away not because he wanted to, but because he couldn't bear to be the wrecking ball she'd never asked for. The invitation was printed on thick, ivory cardstock, with gold foil lettering and the kind of formality that made Jonah roll his eyes. A university gala, technically a fundraiser, but unofficially a vanity fair for donors, professors, and alumni desperate to pretend academia was still sacred. He hadn't planned to go. But his advisor had strongly suggested it, and attendance could mean a coveted TA position next semester. Which meant less debt. Which meant time to breathe. So he showed up in a borrowed blazer, black slacks that didn't quite fit, and a sense of dread curling at the edges of his stomach. He hadn't seen Elise in 3 days. Not since the flyer. Not since the silence began again. The ballroom was a museum of strained laughter and half-finished toasts. Waiters glided between tables with champagne flutes balanced like promises. Jonah stood near the back, drink in hand, scanning the crowd for a familiar face. And then, there she was. Elise. Hair pinned, black dress tailored but modest, eyes guarded behind a shimmer of practiced calm. She looked like someone who had survived a war she didn't talk about. Someone who knew how to smile without meaning it. Their eyes met across the room. He didn't know she'd be here. She didn't expect him either. But neither of them looked away. An older man beside her leaned in, whispered something. She nodded without really listening. Her fingers clutched the stem of her glass a little too tightly. Jonah started walking toward her. Half the room turned to watch. Some recognized her. Some recognized him. A few connected the dots and began to murmur. You could feel it, like static rolling off the walls. He didn't care. She did. Jonah, she said when he reached her. The word was not a greeting. It was a warning. I saw the flyer. I know. They think they're clever. They don't need to be clever. Just cruel. I'm not ashamed, he said. Loud enough for others to hear. She inhaled sharply. You should be. Not of us. But of what they'll do to you. A voice interrupted. Jonah. Professor Mellon. Department head. Silver beard, sharp voice, reputation like a blade. He looked at Elise, then back to Jonah. A word? Jonah didn't move. If this is about who I've been seen with. It's not, Mellon lied. Badly. It's about your standing. Appearances matter. I'm not here to play politics. You're here because I gave you a seat at the table, Mellon snapped. And it's being questioned now. Heavily. Elise turned to walk away. Jonah grabbed her hand. Not forcefully. Just enough to say, please don't disappear again. Gasps. A few phones tilted. It was public now. All of it. Jonah looked around at the room full of stares, whispers, shallow judgments. Then back at Elise. I'd rather be humiliated for the truth than respected for a lie, he said. She closed her eyes. The dam cracked. She wasn't angry. She was terrified. He whispered, low, into her ear. Let them look. Elise turned slowly. Met every gaze with the same tired defiance she'd worn in courtrooms, parent-teacher meetings, hospital lobbies. But this time, her voice didn't shake. Yes. I'm older than him. Yes. We met in a cafe. No. I wasn't his professor. No, I didn't groom him. He's an adult. I'm an adult. We found something that made us feel alive again. That's all. Silence. No one applauded. No one laughed. But something shifted. In the far corner, someone lowered their phone. Another turned away. The room didn't erupt, but it did retreat. Like a wave pulling back. They stood there, not victorious, just visible. Finally visible. Later, outside in the parking lot, Elise exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for months. Well, she said. We just made it worse. Maybe, Jonah said. Or maybe we just stopped hiding. She looked up at him. For the first time, not like a mistake or a regret, but like a person she might have chosen, even if the world had been kind. Then, soft, do you still want this? He didn't answer. Not right away. The question wasn't simple anymore. He looked at the building behind them, then at her. Her hair, her eyes, the way she stood, worn down, yes, but not broken. I want us, he said. Even if it doesn't last. I want it to be real. She nodded. Then she kissed him. Not hidden. Not afraid. And the night didn't swallow them. It just held them, briefly, in its quiet approval. The fallout didn't come all at once. That would have been easier, one sharp blow, quick bruise, fast healing. But it came in pieces. An email from Jonah's department chair, heavy with disappointment masked as concern. A voicemail Elise found from her ex-husband's lawyer, strongly advising discretion or else they'd revisit custody arrangements even though her daughter was already an adult. The sharp glances in grocery store aisles, the cold avoidance from colleagues who once hugged her at gallery openings, the endless murmurs like background static. But what surprised them both wasn't how the world reacted. It was how much heavier the silence between them started to feel. It began as pauses. Just extra seconds between texts. A longer gap before answering the phone. Then it turned into questions neither dared to ask. Is this hurting you more than helping? Do you see me the same, now that we've stepped into the light? Can this thing survive without the secret? They kept seeing each other. Dinners became shorter. Conversations more practical. Less poetry. Less night. Elise became distant, not unkind, but more like the version of herself from before they met. Careful. Composed. Jonah, for his part, tried to fight the shift. Wrote her long, rambling emails about memories they hadn't made yet. Planned little things, a weekend out of town, a trip to the used bookstore 2 hours north, a private art class just for the two of them. Sometimes she said yes. Sometimes she didn't reply. Then one afternoon, mid-November, the rain came down like it had something to prove. Jonah waited outside the cafe where it had all started. She was 20 minutes late. Then 40. Then an hour. He stayed until closing. When he got home, there was a letter. No name on the envelope. Just his address in that careful, slanted handwriting he knew too well. Jonah. I want you to know that this wasn't about regret. It was about timing. About how sometimes the right thing shows up when you're not ready to carry it. You gave me something I didn't think I'd ever feel again. Not youth. Not lust. But breath. You made me feel like I was allowed to want more than survival. And you, God, Jonah, you reminded me what it meant to see beauty in imperfection. But I'm tired. Not of you. Just of fighting. I know you'll hate this. I know you'll think I'm retreating. Maybe I am. But maybe I'm giving you space to become who you're meant to be without anchoring you to someone who's already lived through her storms. I won't ask you not to find me. But I won't make it easy. Just know that I loved you. Fully. Quietly. Fiercely. And that, for a while, you were the truth I never thought I'd earn. Jonah didn't cry. He didn't break anything. He read it again. And again. Then folded it, put it in his jacket pocket, and walked for hours until the sky started to clear. He never replied. He never needed to. Weeks passed. Then months. The story faded from the rumor mill. Campus found new scandals. Elise moved, not far, but out of reach. Jonah graduated, took a fellowship. Got published once, then again. He stopped checking her social media, stopped walking the long loops past the ivy-covered roundabout. But every so often, he'd wake up thinking about her laugh. The real one. The one that sounded like it had clawed its way out from years of silence. And every time he stood in front of a classroom, his own now, he'd think about how she once told him, "You're not made for normal. Don't settle for it." They never saw each other again. Or maybe they did. Across a crowded train platform. In a bookstore aisle. Maybe they passed, felt the flicker of recognition, and didn't speak. That's the thing about stories like this. You can close them. But they don't end. Not really. Not when they made you feel alive. The final question was never spoken aloud. But it hangs there still, between the two of them, years later, in some quiet corner of memory. If we'd met at a different time, would we have made it?